Thank you all for joining our Observability Expert Insight series. I'm Christopher Bonanno, again, your host. And today we have our special guest, Senthil Arunagiri Nathan, who has been our SME and our internal teams for a long time when it comes to security. He's been our go-to person, has a lot of credibility beyond his role here with the observability team, and we're just really excited to have him here. And he's going to be walking you guys through seamless observability, where you can integrate both AppDynamics and Secure App. And he's going to be walking us through this first session of an overview and configuration. Before we jump into the main topic today, there are some housekeeping items. So first of all, we want to assume that you guys have an understanding of what Splunk AppDynamics is. We don't want to spend too much time in review. Time is valuable. Many of you are, already big power users, and then there's probably some of you that are just starting to get your feet wet, and maybe you guys came from a security side of the house and you're trying to go into where you can integrate the two. That's extremely powerful, so I don't blame you. But we do, in the context of this session, we do assume that you have some basic understanding of Splunk AppDynamics. But don't fret if you are still new. I'll give a link to our YouTube channel so you can start getting up to speed. We will keep all of the guests muted during this session, and we will be having a Q&A session later on. But if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the Q&A section of the WebEx, and we'll try along the way to help you. And if there's anything that doesn't get answered before then, we'll go ahead and bring that up at the Q&A towards the end. Obviously, if you guys have any feedback in terms of, hey, the volume's a little low, or I can't see the screen, or something along those lines, let us know in chat, and we'll try to address that in real time. And then obviously, if you end up putting a question in chat, we will do what we can to try to make sure we get that to you, or get that from you, or for you as well. And then lastly, the disclaimer. Obviously, this content is created for and by Cisco. We are Cisco employees, but we are here to help our customers. And if you're just a person that is trying to beef up your resume and not actually a customer yet, we're still here for you. But we don't expect that this is going to be taken and repurposed for anything else. This is our content, but we will give you the YouTube link where you can find it later on, and you can go back and you can rewatch it, send it to your buddies, send it to your teammates, and try to make sure that you guys get the most out of the product that you guys are trying to specialize in. And then without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to Senthil for the agenda.
Thank you, Chris. Do you want to point out where the Q&A is so that some of them may not know?
Oh, it should be in the controls of WebEx. But like I said, if you get caught up trying to find it, feel free to just drop it into the chat. Just let us know the feedback or question that you have any way you can. And it shouldn't be too hidden. There should be the little 3 dots in the bottom right corner if you don't have it showing already. And you should see both chat and Q&A. Q&A is a preference because it'll preserve your question with the answer right below for everyone to see it. Where if you have a chat, sometimes it'll get drowned out by other remarks. So ready when you are, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Chris, can you just double check and whether that you're able to see what I'm sharing, the agenda screen?
Yes, sir. We see it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we'll get going with a high-level overview of secure application. Now, again, the registration said Cisco Secure Application. There's a name change because now the Secure Application, AppDynamics, everything is all part of Splunk and come under Splunk. And so Cisco Splunk Secure Application will be rather long. So it is Secure Application. But I've gotten used to saying Cisco Secure Application. Just excuse me if I do that. So you are on the right webinar, actually, Secure Application, right? All right. So now, in the overview, we'll look at why application security requires modernized approach. Next, we'll cover integration, the benefits of integration between Splunk AppDynamics and Secure Application. From there, we'll walk you through deployment prerequisites and configuration steps. I just want to tell you right now, right? There aren't much of those. It's going to be easy, right? It's easy to enable and get going with secure application. So finally, we will close with a demo and point you to available resources which you can make use of. Right. So now in this section, we'll explain why traditional security approaches fall short in modern environments. So as you know, applications today are distributed, dynamic, and change constantly. To the extent that the only thing which doesn't change is the fact that there will be change, right? So we've all seen that. Now again, what does that do? That overwhelms the teams. Why? Well, false positives. If you're in security world, you've probably gotten used to it by now, right? Where you say, look, wow, more is not always better, right? There are zillions of issues, right? And then your task is to figure out which ones are real. It makes it harder when you have lots of them, hundreds and sometimes thousands of them, right? So you need a way not just to get all the issues, but you need a way to prioritize, from those issues, all right? Now, traditional security tools, they aren't designed for modern architectures like microservices and distributed systems, right? So they typically lack runtime visibility, right? Leading to blind spots around actual exploit attempts, right? So think of, conventional, let's say SaaS tools, right? The static application security testing tools, or traditional SCA tools, software composition analysis tools, they don't work on your runtime application. So something that works on your runtime applications is better, right? Now, as I already mentioned, the issue is also that there are too many false positives, right? What does that do? Because you're trying to figure out whether it's true or not, rather than fixing the ones which are real. What does that do? It slows down remediation, right? So basically, a new approach in the security testing world would be to provide business relevant insight across teams so that you're in the best position to prioritize the issues on hand and address the ones which will give you the biggest bang for the buck from the standpoint of security. All right. So secure application is a security testing tool, application security testing tool, if you would. It's integrated directly into AppDynamics' APM agents. So now that's important, right? No separate agent required for secure application. So that should help you, right? Every time you think about adopting something new, then you go through this like, oh, what do I need to install? What do I need to deploy? What do I need to configure, right? Nothing. You have AppDynamics APM agents, and you basically have your secure application agent. That's it, right? So what does it do? It provides real-time detection of vulnerabilities and attacks, not just vulnerabilities. It enhances application security by tying findings to business transactions, right? So in the AppDynamics world, you should all be familiar with business transactions. If you don't know anything about AppDynamics, the one thing you must know is 1, business transaction. 2, that business transactions are important, right? So now by tying security risk to the business transactions, this secure application helps you prioritize, right? It also incorporates intelligence from Cisco Talos and Cisco Vulnerability Management. These are separate suites, products, services, whichever way you look at it, for free when you're using secure application. You don't separately pay for the value that secure application offers by way of its integration with Cisco Talos and Cisco Vulnerability Management. Secure application detects, as I said, both vulnerabilities and runtime attacks. Real time. That enables teams to respond quickly, right? You don't just hear about it a couple of days later, right? You hear it or know it then, right? You can actually configure alerts also to kind of, notify any system that you have, which you look at, right? Yeah, the reason is you don't typically stare at dashboards day in, day out. Not fun. All right, so it provides application-centric context for the security issues. Now, so again, like in isolation, you know about security issues, right? Traditionally, old tools, right? There are security issues. Now, are they important because they are tied to an important business-related transaction or process? That missing piece of information is what secure application and AppDynamics integration provides, as opposed to if you were to have AppDynamics and let's say that you have another tool which does the same thing, but the lack of the integration will not give you the context of where the issue is and thereby what the importance is, right? So as you can imagine, that helps prioritize the issues. And given that all this is from the single pane of glass, which is Dynamics, right? It helps collaboration across the board, be it among the DevOps, DevSecOps, AppSec, SecOps, and SRE folks, right? Now, as I already mentioned, deployment is lightweight and fast. Why? We said you don't need an agent. You already have one, which is the AppDynamics APM agents. All right, so looking at the secure application components, and we'll hit it one more time, right? No separate agent needed. So now it's part of the thing is then like, oh, where is this functionality coming from? You know, come on, man, how is that? Well, think of it as the secure application as a component of the APM agent or a module, right? Some kind of a functionality which automatically gets loaded, right, when you enable it, maybe, right? So that's the way of looking at it, right? Or maybe it's built in, right? So now what does it do again? We said it detects vulnerabilities, detects and monitors attacks if you want, protects against attacks, right? Then from the standpoint of, what kind of output does it provide, produce and whatnot, it produces, gives you options for downloadable reports, of all the applications where it is enabled, all the vulnerabilities in an application or across the board. You want to look at a security dashboard to kind of see trends and stuff along those lines. Yes, you see that. And then it provides ways for your SIEM integration, right? Security Information Event Management tool integration with HTTP REST interface, right? On top of that, you say like, hey, come on, man, like I don't use reports and all that, download, and what do I do with that, right? Yeah, you have API access, right? So you can basically call that API and get the vulnerabilities for a specific application or a few of them or all of them, right? So you can, and then of course, use it in some other central system where you actually curate that data for some analysis. All right, so there are lots of benefits from this integration between AppDynamics and secure application. So you can see here, with the picture right there, that this is your AppDynamics application dashboard. You kind of see this familiar application flow map, and on the right, after you enable secure application, you see the security health. Now the point here is, this integration provides you with this data or surfaces the security related health information where you already look at, right? So you already are looking at it, you're monitoring, observing AppDynamics, and then, like boom, you enable a secure application, and then you see on this events area, like, the security health, there is something called business risk, right? Security is about what? Minimizing risk, right? Now, again, to minimize risk, you need to know how much the risk is. Well, if you know once you know how much the risk is it a high, low, medium, critical, what? Instead of having a qualitative analysis, you have a number then. Boom, it's from 0 to 1,000, 930 looks pretty high, yeah? Simple, right? And it's surfaced right there. And then if you want, like, sorry, I look at only vulnerabilities, I don't care about attacks, I would say why, right? But let's say, then you focus on vulnerabilities, right? So where it is categorized into critical, high, medium, and low, and then, typically, as you all know, like people look at critical and high, unless they have unlimited budget, which probably would be in a different world, right? For security, at least, having been there with 15 plus years on security, I can tell you that never happens. Attacks, again, in this case, of course, this is a demo system, the number of exploited issues, 0 and all that, but typically, well, in your protection system, you don't want to see anything like that, by the way, right? You probably want to see, if anything, like attempted and blocked, right? Anyway, so the point here is, this integration helps surface security information, right, where you are looking at, you as in, you could be different personas, right? Anybody, right? This is an application dashboard. You will actually see this in the business transaction dashboard as well. So now you don't have to look for it, go hunting for it, right? As long as you care about security is everybody's business, and then you say, hey, I want to know when I see something, I'll say something, to go tell this to the right people so that it can be addressed, right? It does affect the entire organization. All right. So secure application introduce, as I said, quantitative risk measures, right? Helping team prioritize issues based on business impact and the likelihood of the issue, right? Which is effectively the definition of risk, right? So we try to mitigate risk. Now, again, it bridges the gap between the different personas, right? People, AppOps, AppSec, SecOps, with a shared context. You all look at the same thing, right? Now, the visibility into what you're looking at can be, which is basically you roll up into something, like, hey, give me all the vulnerabilities across all the applications which I have CSA enabled, secure application enabled, or you want to drill into, hey, for this given application, for that specific tier, and in that tier, a specific node, give me the vulnerabilities, right? So you can go both ways, right? All right, so that's what that integration provides. The integration delivers unified insights into both performance and application risk, right? So now again, the AppDynamics helps you get an insight into the performance and the health-related characteristics of an application. And then now with secure application, you combine that and give you like the perspective about the application security risk as well, all in one pane of glass, right? And again, I already mentioned about this business risk score. Now, there is more quantitative information, as you see here, Cisco security risk score. Now, that's only to the standard CVSS score that you may already be aware of in a security world, right? Now you say like, the CVSS score is industry standard security scoring system to help you basically understand the severity of a security issue. Why do you need this, right? Well, this includes this as one of its inputs, which means it does a lot more, 5, 6 things, right? Which includes the actual probability, what is seen in the wild. Well, the severity says 9 from the CVSS score system, which is 0 to 10. But like, is it actually being seen in the wild as much as some other issue, which is only CVSS score of 8, but actually being used a lot more? It increases the likelihood. As you know, the likelihood increases, and if the impact could be high, the risk is high, right? So it provides yet another quantifiable way to help you prioritize an issue. It all comes down to that. There isn't unlimited resources, right, and time when it comes to security issues. So you got to know exactly what you need to be spending the time on and now. All right. So this is kind of the little known example I kind of threw in here, right? Say, for example, the secure application dashboard, you kind of have a list of applications where you have enabled secure application, and then you want to kind of drill into, like, say, this one, eSales next, and boom, you look at all the services in that application and then the related errors and the issues, right? Vulnerabilities and such. If you go into that specific tier, then you can actually even drill into the nodes in that tier, right? So again, which I'm not showing here, which I'll look at and show you when we get to the demo. All right. So now there are lots of benefits. We're talking about the benefits. Now, again, it benefits the teams as well, right? And also, for instance, the SREs and the DevOps teams, they gain protection without performance impact. Why is it important, right? So certain people are only in charge of performance, right? And when it comes to security, then to secure systems, typically, or most likely, what happens is it comes with a cost, a hit to a performance. Now, in this case, it comes without that. If anything, very minimal, right, for the value that you're getting, right? Now, what do the AppSec folks get? They get actionable intelligence, not just, like how to prioritize using quantitative information about risk, but it's also about, okay, here is how you prioritize, here's the issue, here is the number why you need to do that. And once you arrive at, okay, I want to do that, and then say, hey, tell me what I need to do. Actionable insights on which specific version of the library that you need to upgrade to address that issue, right? Now, again, so other teams, SREs and folks, they would also benefit by not having to deal with any alerts in response to security issues, right? So because, we actually only provide information about vulnerabilities on libraries and classes that actually get used by your application, not those which are lying around. Let me explain that during the demo, okay? All right. Now, with secure applications, customers gain fast time to value because existing APM agents are leveraged. Well, you just hit the ground running. That's what it is, really, right? So you don't have to install anything, configure anything. Well, configure, yeah, you got to, right? But you don't have to install anything. Now, resource overhead, we already mentioned, is very less, both from the standpoint of memory and CPU, right? So once you enable secure app, we'll actually see how we do that, right? and you actually get insights about security issues, vulnerabilities in the libraries, and so forth pretty quickly, I would say. When I say quickly, please don't think about nanoseconds and all that yet. About an hour is what I've seen. Okay, so all right. So with that, we'll look at deployment. All right. So no great surprise here. I'm not going to surprise you with like 10-page document to deploy secure app after hitting it hard that you don't need an agent. All right, but you do need a license, right? So I don't want you guys to assume that, oh, we have APM agent, right? We have the license for the APM agent. We are just using the same agent for secure application, so we don't need a license. Sorry, you do need a license, separate license for secure application. Just want to call it out there. And in terms of product version requirements, you need a CSA controller version 22.8, which is more than 3 years old. So I'm just going to happily assume that it's SaaS, right? So you better be on the latest one, right? So 3 years new. So I think this is a given. So you're going to have secure app in any SaaS controller you have. In case you are on version older than 22.8, that's probably higher priority to upgrade that than, I would say, adopting secure applications, right? Anyway, so from the secure application standpoint, right, what agents are supported? Java, Node.js, .NET Core, and .NET Framework, as long as you have a version of the agent which is newer than 2 years, right? Now again, so from the standpoint of our support and all that stuff, I think it's probably 1 year after they, well, let's say that's 2 years, right? You're covered, right? So just want to make sure that the point here is your controller is very likely to support it. And all the agents that you have among these 4 different types of agents that secure application will give value, it's very likely that it's newer than 2 years. And which means what? You can get going. You can enable secure application now, right? So there are a couple of pertinent permissions, right? If you just want to stare at the dashboard, secure app dashboard and all that stuff, you need the view secure application, permission, right? For the whichever role that you guys come up with. And then the other one, if you want to come up with policies and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in next week's session. All right. So then more like the edit privileges, configure privileges is what that is. Configure secure application. All right. I'm going to just quickly run through these steps to enable. All right. So kind of summarizing all that we've been talking about. The first thing, you need an APM agent, no CSA agent, APM agent. Okay. License needed, and you are all familiar with the AppDynamics admin console, creating users, roles, all that stuff. Maybe create a role for security people who are view only access, and then give the permissions for the view secure application like we saw earlier, and then the configure secure application if you want somebody who knows a little bit more about what they are trying to do, right? Which we'll talk about next week again. Okay. So now then you enable application. Enable application amounts to basically simply just enabling one big switch at one highest level across the board. I recommend that you not do it, right? Unless, of course, you have this couple of applications, right? And again, you do that in your non-production environment, right? And check it out. Or the better way would be enable it per application, right? So the flexibility which secure application provides is, yes, you can enable it for all your applications, right? Or one application, or a service in an application, or a couple of services in an application, or a couple of nodes or one node in a service or a tier, right? So you have flexibility, just extensive flexibility, so that you can just tread waters, one step at a time, if you would, right? Now, all these are basically, these are do's, and these are effectively do checks. Right, so you've enabled secure application, and then what do you look for? Remember, like I showed you, on the right side of the application dashboard in the events area, there were security events showing up. Yeah, see whether they show up, right? See whether the nodes are active in the security dashboard. Same thing in the libraries, right? So that's pretty much what that is. Here in a quick slide, for people who are wondering, I forget where the permissions are. How do I do that? Where do I create a role? This screenshot would basically help jog your memory on that, and then specifically call out. Again, as you can see here, it's having this old name. It's just a view secure application is what we want. All right. So enabling it, I already mentioned to you there are several switches. We'll walk through them in the demo, and I'm just showing a couple here per application and on nodes, right? All right. So here is what the do check part I was saying, right? You've enabled it for this application, AD e-commerce, and what you see, let's say in about an hour, right? So you would actually see in this area where you've been kind of staring at the transaction scorecard, business transaction health, and suddenly something else shows up here, right? The security health, right? With the vulnerabilities and attacks, and then the business risk score, right? All that, okay? All right, with that, we are ready for the demo, all right? All right, so let me actually just go to the browser, right? All right, and then show the demo, right? Hopefully, you are all able to see browser, and we are going to click on AppDynamics Home in there. We were on the security dashboard at that time, and I'm just going to click on AppDynamics, and so here I'm just thinking, so another environment will be more convenient for a detailed look, and then we'll drill it down to something else in a bit, okay? All right, so here in this application, I'm going to go to AD e-commerce. This is one of our demo environments, right? Now, let's talk about the integration as we saw, and some of their slides, and then those were not, like the screenshots weren't big enough, but hopefully now this is decently big enough, I would think. Here, this, for all those of you who are familiar with AppDynamics, which will be pretty much all of you, right? We chose this AD e-commerce application, and we are looking at the application flow map, and this thing is the application dashboard, right? And because secure application is enabled for this application, you are seeing this security related information like we talked about, right? So though these are kind of secure application and AppDynamics are kind of different kind of services, different backend kind of stuff, but from a user standpoint, like your standpoint, right, you're just viewing it as one, right? This is what you are looking at. You enable secure app and you're looking at this, boom, right? So that's how seamless the integration is, right? So now, of course, we'll drill into these real quick. But before which, talking about AppDynamics, if I don't talk about business transaction, that wouldn't be right, right? There it is, business transactions, right? I did that. And what you would see, business risk column, right, shows up, right? And let's sort this, right? Not in that order, from this order, maybe, right? Now I'm going to just extend like this window in this demo system, right? 4 hours, maybe, right? I'm going to go a little bit more. Let's call it a day, maybe one more day. Let's see, one day. All right, it's good enough, right? So what I'm seeing here is a new column called business risk, and there is a number. And what is this number? This is called the business risk score, right? Like I indicated, right? When it comes to security, it's all about mitigating security risk. So then the question is, how do I figure out how much risk there is, right? Well, then there are two ways of coming up with the risk, right? One is called the qualitative risk analysis. Another thing is the quantitative risk analysis. You have a qualitative risk as output or a quantitative risk as an output. As you can imagine, a qualitative risk is very subjective based on the experience of the person, expertise of the person, right? Who's actually doing the assessment, right? And that's where, when it is subjective, that's a problem, right? Even if with people with 15 years, 20 years experience, you grab two of them and then say, make assessment on this, I've seen that, right? So on the other hand, if you do a quantitative risk based on preset rules, explained well, and what it is, and what the number range is and what they mean, then it's easier. The quantitative risk, all you need to know is basic arithmetic. Is 590 lower than 930? Well, if that's lower, then that's probably medium critical risk, right? Anyway, the point here is, for business transactions, you now have business risk once you have secure application enabled. And that is also on the same screen that you are familiar with, right? All right, business transaction screen, all right? Right there. And then security health at the business transaction dashboard. We saw that in the application dashboard. So now we are able to get a fine-grained level of security information at the business transaction level for this particular business transaction, right? And you have a business risk score for that. And then, of course, all the vulnerabilities, categorized attacks, and all that. All right. Okay. So now that's all about the seamless, information. And then if you were to go right from this overview screen to security, you can do this, right? Boom, security, right? And you'll go to the security dashboard, which the secure application provides. Okay. But now I'm just going to go back here, right? Go back. And let's kind of see what we do typically. You are an application owner, you are AD e-commerce SRE person, and then you understand the value of business transaction, and you are worried. This business transaction checkout is very important for our business, and it has significant risk. I want to understand what the risk is. Okay. Beyond this number 590, I don't know what this is because I'm not a security person, but I care about security because security is everybody's business. All right. So what do? I click on the business risk, right? And it seamlessly takes me to the secure application dashboard, not the dashboard which I showed you earlier on, which is just the homepage security dashboard. Give me everything. But you see the difference here. The context was passed. AD e-commerce application is what I was on, right? And then I was on the business transaction, checkout business transaction. And I clicked on that 590 score, and it's basically telling me, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean, right? Explains to me like, hey, this is 0 to 1,000 scale, and what this criticality means. This is kind of a warning. And then it actually says, what are the business risk factors that contributed to this number, right? So now again, some of you must have thought hey, qualitative risk, quantitative risk, give a number. Yes, it's easy. I know arithmetic. But come on, tell me how did you come up with that number in the first place? So what are the factors that went into coming up with a number? Convince me that I should be using that number, right? That's what you see here, right? So based on that number, in this case, it's just warning, right? You say okay, sold. I'm sold. Now I want to prioritize this. Tell me what you want me to do, right? I'm sold. Thank you for helping me prioritize. How do I address this, right? And then boom, right there, top recommended actions. It says you need to go upgrade that Apache Commons Common Slang 3 to the specific version, okay? And then you want to upgrade the Swagger UI to version 6.3, right? For what service? E-commerce services here, order processing services there, right? So now the point here is it's not just about prioritization, it's also equipping you to accelerate the action towards the remediation process, right? That's what it helps you do. Now, the question then is you'll say okay, great, right? You helped me prioritize this business transaction as the one that I should be working on, right? And thank you for telling me that these two needs to be done. And I do see a lot here. Help me prioritize this, please, right? Then I'll say, hey, come on, you're a security person, this is, even if you're not a security person, right? The CVSS score has been the industry standard, de facto industry standard when it comes to scoring severity of security issues, right? Now, you can use that, right? So again, industry standard, well, use it, right? But then Cisco gives you something more. Secure application gives you something more than just the CVSS score, which is basically just a technical severity. What do I mean by that? It doesn't take into account the risk element to it, which is what security folks care about, right? So do we have anything to help you account for risk? Yeah, that is this. Cisco Security Risk Score, which takes as input the CVSS score as one of the inputs, and then applies lots of other data and comes up with this number to help tie a risk-related number to it based on the likelihood of this issue happening, likelihood of somebody exploiting that vulnerability with this CVSS score of 8.8. That's why you probably want to look at the Cisco Security Risk Score, again, a quantitative measure which is there to help you prioritize, right? So now you say, I want to go use CVSS score. Yeah, good, please do. Industry standard still. But let me ask you then, if there are like 10 CVSS scores, CVSS score of 10, meaning the highest is 10, as you guys know, and then we have 20, 50 items on this, then what do you do? What do you do? Take care of this 20 items with the CVSS score of 10? That still boils down to a question of prioritization then, right? So what I would do then is basically sort on Cisco security risk score, right? And that gives you, right, this is a 0 to 100 score. Out of this 20 CVSS 10, it basically gives you like, the top 3 or basically like 100 or near 100, and boom, there it is. It's always a prioritization problem, right? Once people know what to work on with just NI, right? People's intelligence, natural intelligence, and all these Gen AI related additional intelligence, you can solve a problem. But it's just knowing what to solve first to get the biggest bang for the buck. All right. Okay. So that's that. All right. So I'm going to go over a quick overview on some of the other functionality. Yes, we would cover a lot more of the functionality in next week's session, but I'm going to go over certain aspects which are in here. Okay. First off, in the security dashboard, secure application dashboard, you have like 4 sections, right? Business transaction, it's going to show you what all is critical, warning and whatnot. It shows you the trend, and across, okay, well, in this case, I shouldn't have said across right here, because now it is across all your applications, right? So across all your applications, it'll basically tell you what are the top recommended actions. Isn't this good? This is super, right? You have several applications, but if you were to basically just have a mandate across your organization, guys, I want you all to take care of these 3 upgrades now, right? So these are the top ones, it doesn't matter what application, what service, what not, right? It is the biggest bang for the buck, all right? If it's a SecOps team, is basically kind of have InfoSec team is going to basically kind of say, hey, these, I want to make it mandatory kind of. You can do that. So vulnerabilities, you get a trend line, right? And then, categorized into critical, high, whatnot. And this is one way, your InfoSec team, SecOps team can actually say, hey, we need to baseline it. Like this was 3.3K, sorry, let's get going with critical 89 of these and address them by a particular deadline. And of course, within those, though, you can prioritize it based on business risk score, Cisco security score, and attacks. We'll talk about this next week. All right. Now that's that. And then here you list all your applications. All right. And then I talked about how do you enable, right? So you can enable like this, enable, disable. And then you ask, what is this inherit? I understand enable and disable. What does inherit mean, right? So inherit what value about enable or disable that the parent has. Okay, that's what it means. Now, so basically, if in this demo instance, I am not an admin, and intentionally, I just have a view privilege here, because of which I'm not seeing some things, additional items here, which would enable me to enable secure application for all the application in one shot, right? I told you that's not what you would want to do unless you have only 1 or 2 applications, right? So now say that checkbox, if it is enabled for everything is on, all I need to do is, let's say I say inherit, then in everything, then it'll inherit what the parent disable or enable flags value is, all right? So now here, remember the drill down related picture I had, right? Let's drill it down into this e-sales next. I'm just showing that, you can just dive deeper. And there are several tiers, right? Application, tier, node, right? All that AppDynamic terminology. And you want to dive deeper into this tier. And in this tier, it's unable to load data for whatever reason. Oh, no, it is, sorry, it's just needed a little bit more time, I guess, right? And then these are the nodes. And you actually have a status of. So the point is, I mentioned, right? You have fine-grained control over what you enable, what you disable, right? And if you don't want to tinker at different levels, you just say inherit for this node. So whatever value of this parent tier's value is, if it's enabled, then it gets that, all right? So it has a status also, all right? Okay, so I'm going to go to this business transaction one more time. And here we didn't choose any application. You see across all applications, what are the business transaction? And we can sort by business risk, right? And again, what are the top recommended actions. So the thing is, that is this data that you have. But again, you can view it based on your persona, right? Like, for example, you are from the SecOps team or InfoSec team or whatnot, and then you want to just have a bird's eye view of what are all the libraries across all applications which has a very high CVSS score, right? See, three of them have, well, not three, five of them have a 10. But you see this here, based on the Cisco security risk score, a lot more of them have the maximum criticality number. So though this is just a CVSS score of 9.8, based on what is observed, right, in the wild, if you would, right? So this is as risky as that one. Okay, all right. So anyway, so you get that insight. So that's what you need to do as across the organization view, right? Similar thing with the vulnerabilities, right? You want to take a look at that. And then now the question is, you know this vulnerability. What do you do? All right, let's click on that. So it tells you exactly what you need to do. Remediation, that. More details, and the actual context right here. With references, you can just dive into all the detail you want. Okay. All right. So now these attacks and observations. I'm going to be talking about it next week. All right. All right. So let's go back really quick into the demo of, okay, so as and when I'm able to do that. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so let me just go on. Okay, and then I'm going to go here. All right. So we're going to wrap up here. So with all that information I shared and the demo which we looked at, right? So in closing, right, I'd say secure application provides lots of real world value as organizations use it to reduce vulnerability backlogs, detect active exploitation attempts, again, which we haven't looked at yet, which I promise that we will do next week, and prioritize based on actual business impact, right? And support long-term dev, sec, ops, and all the teams across the organization alignment, right? So now these outcomes, as you can imagine, help the teams focus on high value items to get the biggest bang for the buck. Now, what's next? Right? We'll have a deep dive. Hopefully, you are able to understand the intentionally high-level overview on several fronts about secure application, because this session was supposed to be an introductory session to showcase a couple of things: high-level features, the fact that you don't have to deploy much, and third, enabling secure application is easy, so you can hit the ground running, right? Why wouldn't you do that, especially when you already have everything in place? This is the question, right? And we'll actually have details on maybe with use cases, details about attacks, and use cases which are typical in how you go about using secure application next week. All right. So now quickly, resources here. These are kind of curated resources, and I'm not going to read them right now. So it's going to be part of this recording. You just need to pause this and then get there. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to Q&A and hand it over to Chris, who's been manning the the questions coming in. Over to you, Chris.
Hey, great job, Senthil. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So we did have a few questions that came in, and in regard to the resources that were on that slide, they will also be added to the description in the video recording on YouTube as well. So if you're not able to grab those and you want another source of being able to grab them, we can do that for you. In addition to coming to our enablements and checking out our YouTube content, we definitely recommend that you guys start going towards the way of getting certifications. The observability products from Cisco, like Splunk AppDynamics and Splunk Secure App that we covered today, and their integrations, they're going to become more and more relevant in your working day to day, or if you're trying to build up your resume. Either way, you need to show some validation, right? You need to show your little badge in the bottom. Get the most out of your products using or with Splunk and Cisco. Check out the Cisco University u.cisco.com and get trained up. Let's go ahead and close out. Not only is this recording going to be up on our YouTube page, like I said before, but we have a lot of really good on demand or live sessions that we host. It's all feedback driven. So you guys let us know in the comments, hey, we really like this. Can you go a little more on this? Or, I'm having a lot of trouble finding content on that. That might be what we're going to have and host on our next session or our next release of a video. So do check it out. And otherwise, we'll see you back same time next week. Tell your friends they missed out on an amazing session today. Maybe they'll join next time and they can watch that recording in the time between. But thank you all for making this a successful session. Thank you for all the questions, and we'll see you next time. Great job, Senthil.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all. Bye for now.